The pasuk in Sefer Ovadia says, "V'haya beis Yaakov eish," that the house of Yaakov will be a fire, meaning the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, is compared to a fire. The pasuk in Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Songs, explains that the nations of the world are compared to water. Obviously, fire and water are incompatible. Water puts out a fire. That's what fire hydrants are used for. That's what firefighters use when they have to put out a fire. So how is it possible for the Jewish people, for the Jewish nation, representing fire, to live in a world of the nations of the world that represent water? If we're not compatible, how can we survive? How do we exist? The answer is by a medium. If we take water and we pour it over our burner on our stovetop, when the flame is on high, there's no question, it may take a few seconds, but there's no question that the water is going to put out the flame. But if we take that same water and we pour it into a pot or into a kettle, and we place that pot or kettle on top of the very same fire, the fire and the water will be able to coexist because it has a medium. But not just coexist. The fire will be able to inspire the water to impact and to effectively change the water. The water will no longer be cold, the water will become warm or hot. It's only because we have that barrier that the fire will not only be able to survive, but the fire will be able to be victorious. Rabbi Akiva Eger, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, was once greeted when visiting a city by a number of city townspeople. And there were some of them who appeared to be dressed like Jews, how they were dressed in Rabbi Akiva Eger's city. And others seemed to be dressed more modern, like the non-Jews living in the city. And Rabbi Akiva Eger gave this comparison to them about Eish and Mayim, in order to say to them, to teach them that they had to realize that they're special, and they needed to dress like Jewish people, in order that their fire was not put out by the water, representative of the society in which they had become engaged. In our Parshas Pekudei, Moshe takes a picture of the final complete Mishkan. And one of the psukim that is repeated over and over in different ways, the Torah tells us that there were Bigdei Kodesh, garments, holy garments, that were created for Aaron and for his sons, for the Kohanim, because they were special. They were the ones who were chosen to do the service of Hashem, the work of Hashem in the Mishkan and later on in the Batei Mikdash, and they had to look different, they had to look special, because they had to feel special about themselves. And so too, we, the Jewish people, as we represent fire, also need to make sure that we feel special, that we feel different than society that is around us. And what I'm really talking about at the core is tznius, is modesty. It's very important for us to, of course, look presentable. As we're involved in society, we're involved with the nations of the world, we're able to give, we're able to take. And so there are challenges that come with that coexistence, and part of the challenge is tznius, is modesty. Particularly we see this with many of our young people who are inspired by the fashion of today and want to be accepted, want to be respected, and want to be looked at as a member of society. But we also have an obligation to teach ourselves and to teach our children that while we can be engaged in the society around us, and we can contribute to the society around us, and we can even gain from the society around us, if we don't create a barrier in between the fire and the water, then ultimately the water will put out our fire. It's appropriate and it's necessary for us to share this message. And tznius, modesty on a physical level, our clothing that we wear, doesn't mean that we can't be fashionable. But what it does mean is that we have to keep to the standards of what Hashem wants from us, in being able to cover our body appropriately based on our teachings and not based on what's considered to be popular in society. We need to realize and recognize just how special and unique we are as Hashem's children, and that in order for us ultimately to become a light unto the nations, to allow our flame, our fire, to inspire and to impact the society and the nations around us, we have to maintain our barrier, and that barrier is our sense of modesty. Modesty not just by how we carry ourselves, but modesty by our appearance, by dressing accordingly and respectfully according to Torah standards. And that might mean different things to different people. But if in our mind conceptually the difference exists, and the word modesty and the word tznius exists, then ultimately we'll be able to preserve our fire and allow our fire to inspire the water that we live in and live among as well. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.